Hi and good day everyone. I am Kevin Laguna Blanco and I am going to discuss the short stories after IDSA in 1986. The first story that I'm going to discuss is entitled The Very Last Story of Holly by Lilia Quindosa Santiago. This article is about the life of Holly after she survived sexual exploitation from Padre after jumping out of the dormitory window. She dwelled around in search for food and shelter. As she was roaming around, she happened to pass by a group of men who were drinking. These men raped her, leaving her an emotional trauma she would carry on for life. She had a chance to seek help from an investigator, but unfortunately, she was also raped by the investigator. She later on met Tin Yung who took her in, thinking that this man is good-hearted person. She went with him only to experience sexual exploitation again, but Holly survived after she managed to kill Tin Yung in fear for her life. Now, what is the relationship of the story, the very last story of Huli in Idsa? So, the relation of the story, the very last story of Huli is that it is one of the short story that was translated in English and that was done during the post IDSA. The short story, the very last story of Holi, portrays or symbolizes the Filipino people and the problem they encountered during those time. The story portrays how human rights violation and power are being overused and being practiced incorrectly. The story of Holly, a symbol of suffering and resilience. The story follows Holly, a victim of systemic abuse and exploitation, as she endures repeated violation of her dignity and humanity. So first we have survival from exploitation. Holly escapes the dormitory, symbolizing an attempt to break free from oppression, only to face even more severe abuses from the people she encounters, including supposed protectors like the investigator. Another one, dehumanization and trauma. Her suffering at the hands of multiple perpetrators reflect the pervasive misuse of power and the lack of accountability during time. Her descent into insanity represent the long-term psychological effects of abuse and loss of self. Hull's journey portrays how the powerless, particularly women, become victims of both societal neglect and systemic abuse. Number two, reflection of human rights violations. Holy Story symbolizes the Filipino people's experience of oppression during the martial law period and its uh, lingering effects. So A. Sexual exploitation and abuse of power. The repeated violations, Holy Faces represent the unchecked abuse of authority that plagued the martial law era. Officials and figures of power exploited their positions, just as the investigator abused Holy instead of helping her. The next one is neglect and marginalization. Holy's inability to find genuine help reflects the lack of institutional support for the oppressed, particularly women, during the time. A symbol of resilience amid systemic abuse, Holy represent the Filipino people who endured trauma and exploitation yet survived against all odds. Her eventual insanity reflects the psychological toll of years of oppression and neglect, echoing the collective trauma of martial law survivors. So the themes and symbolisms, the story employs powerful themes and symbols to critique societal issues. We have this one, abuse of power. Holly's abusers, especially the investigator and Tenyong, symbolize how those in positions of power or trust often exploited the powerless for their own gain. So this reflects the corrupt practices rampant during martial law and even in the post-EDSA period. Another one, gender and vulnerability. Holly's experiences highlight the intersection of gender and systemic abuse. Women, particularly those without resources or support, were often the most vulnerable to exploitation. The story amplifies the need for gender sensitive reforms and stronger protection mechanisms for women. So the third one, social indifference. The townspeople gossiping about Holly's insanity reflects society's tendency to judge victims without addressing the root causes of their suffering. This critique of social apathy remains relevant today. The fourth one, relevance to Philippine literature and society. The story contributes to post-EDSA Philippine literature by first giving voice to the marginalized. So Holy represent silence victims of abuse, providing a platform to discuss social and systemic issues. Second one, highlighting human rights issues. The story raises awareness about the importance of justice, equality, and institutional reforms, values that became central in post-EDSA Philippines. The third one, encouraging reflection. It prompts readers to examine their own rules in perpetuating or combating injustices in society. In conclusion, the very last story of Holy is more than just a narrative for one woman's tragedy. It's a symbol of the Filipino people's struggle against systemic abuse and societal neglect, particularly during and after the martial law period. As a piece of post-IDSA literature, it serves as a critic of the misuse of power and the failure to uphold human rights, while also emphasizing the resilience of the oppressed. So the story remains relevant today as a reminder of the importance of justice, empathy, and accountability in building a fair and humane society. And that's would be all. Thank you.